From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. News anchor Marzieh Hashemi from the Iranian station Press TV is being held in a detention center in Washington, D.C. in FBI custody following an arrest at the St. Louis airport. No formal charges have been leveled against Hashemi, who is a U.S. citizen. Reports have indicated that Hashemi had her hijab removed against her will and that she was denied access to halal food. Relatives were unable to contact Hashemi for over 48 hours. Speaking to Press TV, Peyman Jebeli, who heads the Islamic Republic of Iran Broadcasting World Service, said that Hashemi was being held in inhumane, unethical and illegal psychological conditions.
Well, we today, in the morning, we learned that our dear colleague, Ms. Hashemi, like from 3 days ago, she's been detained. We didn't have any details about the incident until the time we learned that she's going through a tough time. We got aware that she has been kept in prison under very difficult conditions without any charges. It's not clear what her crime and accusation is.
The parliament in Britain has begun debating a motion of no confidence in the government of Theresa May. These are live pictures from Westminster. The opposition Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn tabled the motion after the government suffered the biggest defeat in British political history on Tuesday. Members of Parliament rejected May's Brexit deal with the European Union by a margin of 230 votes. The results of the confidence vote is expected at around 7 p.m. London time. Let's hear from our correspondent Pablo Navarrete, who has more.
Today, Wednesday, Theresa May will face a motion of no confidence put forward by the socialist leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn. Now, this comes on the back of her humiliating and quite catastrophic defeat for her Brexit deal that was put to Parliament last night, where she lost by 230 votes, the biggest defeat by government in recent history. A massive defeat, which under normal circumstances would mean that she would have to resign and a general election would be called. However, we're British politics not living normal times in the sense that there are moves to prevent Jeremy Corbyn coming to power at any cost, who is viewed as a dangerous radical, a left-winger, feared by much of the British elite and by sort of centrist groups, including in his own party, who have never accepted his leadership and who have been openly hostile to his leadership. So tonight it is expected that Theresa May will survive the vote of no confidence. So those that voted against the deal last night within her own party are expected to support her today. However, even if she does survive this vote, the profound crisis that is afflicting her position as leader and her government in general will continue, given that the European Union has reiterated on numerous occasions that it will not be renegotiating the deal in any significant sense. President Macron of France has reiterated this only yesterday, and so Theresa May has really run out of options. It remains to be seen how they square preventing a general election and preventing or ensuring that Theresa May carries on with her authority in shreds. So effectively now we are in a state where we have a government in power, but that is not able to govern. So the vote tonight, she's expected to win, but the crisis will continue.
That was Pablo Navarrete from London. Earlier we spoke on this issue with Telesur political analyst Tariq Ali for some insight into the latest Brexit developments.
Well, I think this is a huge defeat, and historically it is the largest defeat ever inflicted by the British Parliament on a Prime Minister. Had she done the decent thing, she would have resigned immediately and forced her party to elect a new Prime Minister, or given way to a general election. She hasn't done that, but the scale of the defeat shows how isolated she is. And what she's going to do now will depend to a certain extent on the vote of confidence, which is going to happen later today. I think the conservatives even the conservatives who hate her, are so scared of a general election that they will back her. Even though they crushed her yesterday, they will back her today, which is their contradiction. And I'm not at all sure that the no confidence motion in her government will pass. Were that to happen, she would have to resign and there would be a new general election.
And Tariq also spoke on the possibility of a second referendum on Brexit and the prospects for a general election.
And I have to be honest with you, I do not like the way in which people talk about a people's vote, as if those who voted in the first referendum weren't people. What were they, animals? So this whole notion that this is a proper vote, will be a proper vote is ridiculous. We will see. There is no guarantee that a second referendum will come up with something different. The split in the country now on this is very huge. Corbyn, of course, wants a general election, and he's absolutely right, because the problems facing the country, quite honestly, have little to do with remaining or quitting. It is that it's in a mess economically and politically. All this time it's been in the EU, and the Corbyn government has got a manifesto which will reverse the processes of conservatism and reactionary labourism that have been enforced for the last 3-4 decades.
In other news, in a New York courtroom, a dramatic testimony in the case of El Chapo, alleging that former Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto accepted a $100 million bribe from Joaquín Guzmán, the drug lord known as El Chapo. Speaking as a witness, Alex Cifuentes Villa, a Colombian involved with the drug trade, said that Peña Nieto offered to cancel a nationwide manhunt for Guzmán in exchange for $250 million. El Chapo allegedly countered with $100 million. Hundreds of Hondurans headed for the U.S. in the latest migrant caravan have been held up by officials at the Guatemala border. Our correspondent Hilda Silvestrucci reported late Tuesday evening that more than 300 people remained at the border crossing, as authorities had not given them permission to enter. On Tuesday, about 200 were able to pass through the Agua Caliente border crossing. However, hundreds were turned away or detained by Guatemalan migration officials for not having the necessary documents to enter the country.
We made the decision because in San Pedro Sula the situation is difficult. This is a decision which is being taken by many people, and I hope, if God's willing, we will continue advancing.
We look for work, and there is practically none. They always say that they are going to call us, or maybe that they need 5 or 10 years of experience.
And more than 500 Hondurans met in a bus station to begin their journey to the United States.
Entire families have once again decided to leave Honduras due to the crisis in the country.
There are simply no jobs. We do not have access to food every day. So that is why me and my wife took the decision of migrating. We cannot find a job here.
There is a lot of violence. Children are threatened by gangs to join them. We cannot go on like this.
Young people say there are no job opportunities, and violence also makes them choose to leave their homeland.
I worked for 1 week in order to collect money and leave the country.
Parents decided to travel with their children due to a lack of basic goods.
We don't have medicine in hospitals. There's nothing to treat my kids when they get sick. I want my son to have a good future. That's what I'm looking for.
People gathered at the bus station said no one organized this. Instead, they knew about the meeting thanks to social media. They also said they are willing to move forward until the end because they feel they have been deceived by the Honduran government.
Juan Orlando Hernandez lied to us when we voted for him. He said young people would have jobs. That never happened. So that is why we are here all together, to leave the country.
As it happened with the first migrant caravan, it is expected that more people will join the group along the way until they reach the Guatemalan border. People in this caravan have not yet decided which way they will take to get out of the country. Although they assume the way is militarized, they say they are confident about reaching their destiny.
Meanwhile, the Pentagon has extended U.S. troop presence at the border with Mexico until the end of September. The deployment was planned to end on January 31st, but an extension was reportedly approved by the Pentagon after a request made by the Department of National Security. Currently, there are over 2,000 troops stationed at the border. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro has held a meeting with the General Staff of the National Bolivarian Armed Forces prior to the year's first military exercises called Sovereignty 2019. Marking the bicentennial of the Angostura Congress, led by Simón Bolívar in 1819. The meeting took place at the Ministry of Defense. Preparations for military exercises ordered on January 10th were verified. Maduro had previously overseen the strategic designs of the exercises, which will take place in February. They will involve social organizations as well as the Bolivarian militia.
The military civil operations bicentenary of Angostura for the integral defense of the nation will be led on February 10th and 5th of 2019. Preparations begin in all of the 8 regions of integral defense and in the 24 integral defense zones in each of the 4 components and with 1,600,000 militias.
The Minister of Defense of Venezuela, Vladimir Padrino López, reiterated the loyalty of the armed forces to the constitutional mandate of President Maduro.
We are in the court of honor of the military college to fulfill and reaffirm our loyalty to acknowledge President Maduro's lawful constitutional legal position as President and Commander-in-Chief for the next period, and also to swear again and reaffirm our oath to the motherland.
Social movements in Colombia have expressed their support for the Venezuelan people and the government. They reject the hostility promoted by Iván Duque's government against their neighboring country.
¡Viva la revolución bolivariana de Venezuela!
Colombians are mobilizing to express their support for Venezuela and to criticize the interventionist policies promoted by the Colombian government.
It makes no sense. The position taken by our government has no moral or ethical standing. Our criminal government, all the governments we've had have basically been following the U.S. I can tell you that the Venezuelan government is very brave.
Social movements criticize the attacks against Venezuelan sovereignty. They highlight the fact that in Colombia, top officials are involved in corruption scandals, that there is a humanitarian crisis with poverty and malnutrition, and over 500 social leaders have been killed.
They don't have moral authority. Here in Colombia, we have serious issues. The public prosecutor is under investigation and is linked to the Odebrecht case. And many social leaders have been murdered.
Social movements also reject some belligerent messages promoted by the media and the manipulation of public opinion.
We should try to dismantle the media campaign against Venezuela, promoted by current and former government. This is a media war that's confusing the Colombian people.
And because of that, social groups have called for solidarity with the people who keep on struggling for independence, and importantly, against the attempts at intervention that go against democracy, freedom, and peace in the region.
We have more stories coming up. We'll be back. Welcome back. The Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean unveiled their annual report, Social Panorama 2018 in Chile, in which it says there has been an increase in extreme poverty in the region. Research was carried out taking into consideration functional inequality, social expenditure, and labor and social inclusion. The report stated that in 2018, poverty dropped to 29.6%, which is equivalent to 182 million people, 2 million less than in 2017. However, the extreme poverty rate remains at 10.2%, or 63 million people, which is 1 million more than in 2017.
In which cases do we have to look at extreme poverty carefully in Central America? Honduras, for example, is one of the countries where extreme poverty has increased, causing migration. This is because people don't have access to labor, income, or social service.
8 social leaders and human rights defenders have been killed in Colombia during the opening days of 2019. Threats continue, and the most recent one is coming from the village of El Salado in the department of Bolívar.
The people of El Salado are experiencing a moment of anguish. There have been threats against 13 of their social leaders, made by identified armed groups. People are being forced to relive the fear following the massacre of the year 2000, in which paramilitaries killed more than 60 local residents.
This clearly reveals a strategy to break and unravel the social fabric, the democratic fabric of Colombian society. There are constant threats in areas like Montes de Maria, the south of Córdoba, Ralito, and for non-governmental organizations in Bogotá.
There was a recent attack on Bogotá-based Erika Bautista Foundation, an organization that supports victims of forced disappearance.
That weekend, upon their arrival, employees found that windows had been broken through. Our neighbors suggested that it must have happened between 4:30 and 5 a.m. in the morning, and security cameras revealed that a man was behind it.
It's not the first time that these kinds of things have happened to Foundation employees.
There are 14 investigations underway, but they're paralyzed. It's a bad precedent for us because we think that if these people are identified, the threats would stop.
Already in 2019, 8 social leaders have been killed in Colombia, and there have been attempts in many regions in the country. The indigenous movement has been one of those affected through the murder of Leonardo Nastacuas Rodriguez.
In December, there was a massacre of the elected authorities for 2019. Then, on the 28th, they tried to assassinate another elected authority, and the governor-elect and his wife were injured. This year, they murdered a colleague from the Agua community.
The means of protection haven't been strong enough. They ought to apply preventive measures, territorial control, and get clear results from investigations in order to ascertain the actors at play.
The government of Ghana has appealed to its citizens in the diaspora to return home. In an effort to boost Ghana's economy, the government is aiming to reverse outward migration in 2019 and encourage the country's citizens working overseas to come home. This is in spite of the economic problems that the Western African country is facing.
It's a good idea for everybody to come back home if you're from Ghana or your roots are in Ghana, but I don't know if it's right to stay in Ghana at the moment. I don't feel personally that Ghana is that stable financially.
The Zimbabwean police have detained leading activist Ewan Mawarire after the fuel price hike protests. Mawarire, leader of political activist movement This Flag, was taken from his house Wednesday morning in Harare and detained by police. Mawarire is one of the activists who had mobilized people to protest higher fuel prices announced by the government. In return, the government blames the opposition and activists for the violent protests that resulted in the destruction of property and looting of shops.
They are alleging that he has incited violence through Twitter and other forms of social media, particularly in the Central Business District. We've asked for full particulars, when, how. They say they don't know. They'll give that to him at the police station. We've asked how asking for people to stay away can constitute incitement to violence. But of course, this is a new dispensation, guys.
These protests we called for doesn't have anything to do with politics at all. They do not have anything to do with electoral issues at all. They do not have anything to do with Nelson Chamisa, whom is the opposition president. Ours is all about fuel. Ours is all about the skyrocketing prices of basic needs.
The president of Zimbabwe, Emmerson Mnangagwa, thanked his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin for supporting the African country in the wake of international sanctions. The two leaders spoke at the Kremlin on a range of subjects from military modernization to future loans. President Mnangagwa is on an official visit to Russia.
Zimbabwe has been suffering from sanctions imposed by the West for nearly 2 decades. And we are now doing our best to re-engage after the new dispensation has come into effect. And during the days of isolation, you stood by us.
We're taking one last break, but stay with us. Welcome back. Kenyan security forces have killed 4 militants who were responsible for a hotel attack in Nairobi. President Uhuru Kenyatta made the announcement early Wednesday. At least 15 civilians were killed in this attack.
I can now confirm that as of about 1 hour ago, the security operation at Dusit Complex is over and all the terrorists eliminated. As of this moment, we have confirmation that 14 innocent lives were lost through the hands of these murderous terrorists, with others injured. We are grieving as a country this morning, and my heart and that of every Kenyan goes out to the innocent men and women violated by senseless violence.
Earlier, Nairobi residents woke up to news that workers continue to be trapped inside the hotel 16 hours after the attack. Gunfire was reported to have been heard again at the hotel complex at around 6 a.m. The attack began on Tuesday with an explosion in the parking lot and then a suicide bomb in the foyer of the City 2 hotel.
Security should have been beefed up since there was a warning that an attack was imminent. The government should have been more vigilant and not have waited for something to happen before getting serious. They should be serious about this at all times.
Nigeria's ruling All Progressives Congress has been caught using plagiarized materials to prepare its manifesto. In this document recently uploaded on the website, the party said its priority was to ensure a safe and secure America, a line used by U.S. President Donald Trump on his campaign. However, the party claims its website was hacked. But in 2016, President Muhammadu Buhari was caught using lines from a speech once delivered by former U.S. President Barack Obama. The world's largest religious festival is into its second day in India. More than 100 million Hindu pilgrims are expected to take part in the Kumbh Mela over the next 7 weeks. They come to Allahabad to bathe in the sacred waters of the Ganges, Yamuna, and Saraswati rivers. Up to 30 million believers line up to plunge into the water on a single day. And with that unique story, we end our news brief. But you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And we're also on social media, so go ahead and follow us. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.